It being 6 o'clock, I will call to order the August 11th meeting of the Swansea Planning Board here at Whitcomb Hall. I'll begin with the roll call. Scott Self, ma'am here. Michael York.
Here.
Jane Johnson.
Here.
Michael Day. Brandon Self.
Here.
Richard Lane.
Here.
And Bill Hutwelker. Steve Malone, alternate, and Lily Gallagher, alternate. And there is no alternate to seat for Michael Day, so we have a quorum, so we will continue. The agenda, we have no alternate to seat for Michael Day, and we have a quorum, so we will continue with the meeting. And let's see, we have as the agenda is the applications and public hearings, the planning board number 22017. It's a site plan review application. It's a continued public hearing from our last meeting, July 28th. Jonathan Holden has submitted a site plan review application to make improvements to the Lanefield property owned by the town of Swansea, located at 120 South Road and shown at tax map 24 lots 2 to 1 and 4. And the subject property is located in residential district, and they were not ready for this meeting, so it will be continued until our next meeting, which is the 25th of August. Next is discussions and other business. Terry Lewis, rezoning discussion, John Flatley Company, site plan modification, compliance hearing, store at Swansea, tax map 72 lot 93. And a compliance hearing for the West Swansea Road Solar Garden, tax map 71 lot 13-2, and site plan review regulations under aquifer protections and any other business that may be required. So first of all, we will review and approve the minutes of last meeting. Anybody have any comments on the minutes of our last meeting? And if not, then a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Okay. Motion by Michael York to approve the minutes as presented, seconded by Brandon Self. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, as far as regional impact, there isn't anything left on the agenda for regional impact, so we don't need to vote. So we can skip that. That brings us right down to discussions and other business. And we're having a discussion with Terry Lewis about a rezoning decision. And is he here?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're here. Okay, so it looks like, would you like to present what you want to do?
Sure. Should I come up there?
You can, yeah, whatever you feel comfortable doing, that's fine.
All right, so I made a little copy of the map so that you guys would know what I was talking about. Recently, there were some other properties near mine that were changed into business district.
Yep.
And I would like to be included in that because mine is this property right here in the purple.
Right there, okay, yeah, that goes behind those two that anybody's seen, I'll pass it down that way and then you guys can pass it across there. So-
At the dead end of James Road, my property actually goes along Route 12. And I'm hoping that at some point in the future, I have business there.
Yeah, and then right, the properties surrounding that are actually in front of it there. We did propose rezoning and the town voted to rezone it. So the planning board, if they have no objections for next year's, this would be for the town meeting next year, for March. When we start reviewing those types of things, let's see, probably right after the beginning of the new year. I think the board, unless the board has any objections to not recommending that at this point. So it looks like probably we'll wait until that stuff starts coming in hand, and we'll have a public hearing and try and get it on to the town warrants.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, so there will be a public hearing before it goes to the meeting.
Oh, yeah, right. And it'll be combined with other zoning changes we may have next year. So it'll be tabled or we'll wait until probably after the first of the year to discuss those things. Yep. Next up is John Flatley Company site plan modification. So You're here with modifications to the site plan, and what we're doing is we're discussing it, deciding whether or not we're gonna have a public hearing for those modifications. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chad Brandon, civil engineer with Fieldstone Lake Consultants. And I'll be representing the John Flatley Company this evening. With me tonight from the John Flatley Company is Kevin Walker. Sorry. And we wanted to just present to the board some proposed modifications to the site plan approval that was done over this site. Back in, it was probably a couple months ago, actually now, right? A couple months ago, we were before you. We were proposing a mixed-use development, 208 units in the back. Each building, each of the 4 buildings would have a garage. The clubhouse was proposed to be situated in this location here. And then we were proposing a 5,000 square foot flex building along Route 32. We obtained approval from the board, and then ultimately we took that plan set, the Flatley Company took that plan set and they sent it out to a number of contractors to get estimates on the project. Unfortunately, I think because of the sign of the times, those construction numbers came in significantly high. And so we've been looking at the site and trying to do some value engineering to make the project viable so that they can go forward with the construction and complete the state permit for this site. So I wanted to start with what is currently approved and then talk about what they would like to do. So as you can see, looking at this plan, this was done by some of the Flatley Company personnel. But basically what they're proposing to do is to make some minor modifications internally. Take, for example, building 4, move building 4 in, a little bit, shift the garage that was in front of building 4 off to the side. And they're trying to make some adjustments internally to remove some of the retaining walls that were designed in with the project. And those were built in with the understanding that those costs would be similar to construction numbers that they've received over the last couple of years on some of their other sites. Fortunately, that was not the case. So there was a retaining wall behind building 4 that was removed with that adjustment. The clubhouse, which was situated here, actually had kind of retaining walls around a good majority of the perimeter. So they're proposing to relocate the clubhouse out front and to eliminate the 5,000 square foot industrial flex building. One of the reasons why they wanted to eliminate the building out front is when Mr. Flatley started looking at the site and kind of started focusing on some of the construction elements, it kind of dawned on him that the location of that flex building not having its own access out front was really going to change the arrival for the residents, 208 units that will be internally. So he thought, when they're starting looking at making a viable project, that improving that entrance would improve the arrival for the residents and get rid of any conflicts that might have existed relative to uses. Like that's along the state highway, so normally he has a nice stone lined entrance, that says welcome to their facility basically, and to go through that and then to immediately accommodate an entrance to a smaller industrial flex facility. When they started looking at some costs, there was more of a benefit to eliminate that, and frankly there was more of a fiscal benefit to evaluate removing that versus other parts of the project, and we'll touch on that. So the other modification here was putting some of the site amenities on an area more centrally located. We had talked about having the pool. There was other site amenities that the John Flatley Company typically provides, such as a tennis court, pergola, some barbecue stations, and, you know, they have a putting green at a number of their facilities as well. And so the idea was to try to integrate that in a location central and have that recreation trail kind of dive into those site amenities that was going to be along the perimeter of the site. So what that does is it eliminates a number of infrastructure costs relative to retaining walls, and it also, I think, better utilizes a portion of the site that really wasn't contemplated, you know, which is that center area there. The only other modification, I mean, other than, you know, making some shifting of buildings so we could eliminate retaining walls, is we are proposing kind of a maintenance structure here that eliminates the need for everybody to travel to a dumpster location that was situated on the backside of the parking area near building 3. So be more conveniently located for people when they're, you know, they would load their trash in their vehicle. You know, if they're exiting the site, they can drop it off in that location. And then there would be some storage for site maintenance in that location as well. A little bit more conveniently located instead of off the end parking area. So that's, you know, generally a summary of the modifications. We've reduced impervious cover, so the stormwater is going to be, you know, easier to meet. We haven't changed any of the infrastructure design as far as utility connections, because the building modifications are very slight, with the exception of, you know, removing basically the 3,500 square foot clubhouse up here and removing the 5,000 square foot flex building with associated loading and parking area. So there's an overall reduction in impervious area. We're anticipating where the clubhouse was, maybe doing some stormwater mitigation in that area and taking advantage of, you know, the close proximity of, you know, that area to some of the improvements. But overall, the footprint of the project is generally the same. We're not moving any of the buildings closer to the perimeter or anything like that, so it's not going to have an impact on any of the abutters. What we'd really like to do is to continue into the permitting phase. We think that, you know, we've gone kind of backwards on the overall square footage and overall impervious cover. So we're here tonight hoping that the board would consider that it falls, you know, within the current approval that we have, so that we can move forward and finalize the state permitting so that this can happen as soon as possible. The other kind of time sensitive feature here is, I know the road agent has reached out and they're looking for a contribution to the construction of Safford Drive. And, you know, ideally we would make sure that we're all set with, you know, planning board approval before, you know, funds are allocated for, you know, something like that. So I think timing wise, he's trying to get that done as soon as possible. At least that's my understanding from talking with Mr. Walker with the John Flatley Company. So, you know, we're here to answer any questions and concerns that the board may have, and really just seeking some direction on how we should proceed.
All right, thank you. So any immediate questions while he's up there from the board as to what's going on? What we're doing here is deciding whether it warrants a public hearing, whether the changes are substantial enough to warrant a public hearing. And again, the whole idea of a public hearing is so that the public will have a chance to view it and comment on the project, as any of our public hearings are. Not necessarily it's a board thing, but we're responsible really for keeping the public informed. So anybody have any comments on this?
Referencing back to SMC, and what they proposed with their building, I feel as though we would have to do the same as what we're requiring of them, reflect and have a public hearing. See any way around.
Yeah. Okay. Brandon?
With that particular one, though, they were doing a lot of building changes. They changed the footprint and stuff, right? Because they were moving the garage to underground and stuff like that. This one, they're just removing buildings from it and changed a couple areas around. I think, I don't feel. We should go through the whole public hearing again.
But then we're formulating a double standard. I think that's when
Michael?
I don't see the double standard there because we take each and every project on its own. Okay, and I don't see anything in this that really constitute having a public hearing. Nothing major in here.
Jane?
I think it just tightens it up. You know, I think you just tightened up more and condensed. And condensed than they were. I kind of like public hearings. But I think it's fair to people in neighborhoods. So I could go either way.
Okay. Staff have any comments? Sarah?
It's hard to say. I completely understand what Mr. Lane is saying. I would comment there are not a lot of butters for this property, which is also similar to SMC. There were not a lot of butters that came out in opposition to the plan as it was approved. That should be considered in the decision on whether or not to have a public hearing.
All right, well, my take is more with Richard's take there, only because there are some changes. You're moving the clubhouse out to the main road there, changing that part of it. You're moving the recreational part up to the center of the lot, and there's probably going to be drainage issues, drainage changes you're going to do there as well, which the planning board probably should see in a public hearing, in my opinion anyways, in a public hearing setting, just to go over those types of changes. And I know that you're in a bind, you got to get going on things like that, but still, my opinion is that we should have a public hearing on it, just because of those things and the issues. There may be lighting changes in there. Don't know until we are submitting the drawings. So yes.
I actually think it's good too that they moved the waste area over closer, because then people don't have to make a trip up to the back of, you know.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying one way or the other whether the changes are good or whether they're bad. I'm just saying that they're changes, and I think they're enough to warrant a public hearing. And even though Sarah is correct, there weren't many abutters there to come out to take a look at it. But it's our job to do that, I think, in this case here. I think anyway, but again, it's going to be a board decision, a motion and a second and a vote is how we're going to decide it. So if there are any other, yes.
I mean, I can comment a little bit on the drainage. So the drainage design for the flex space had a good portion of it going over here to a stormwater management area situated to the north. That's going to be maintained with this. And then there was a small area down in this corner where we were just treating some residual runoff. Basically, there was some runoff coming just from the road over this way, and that's going to be maintained. And the overall impervious area out in front is less. Those stormwater features will change, a little bit, but the design intent will generally be the same throughout. So it's obviously, we're trying to advocate for the fastest way, but certainly respect everybody's opinion. But if there are questions or concerns relative to what a change might be, we're happy to talk about it because we have.
Okay, so what'll it be, board members?
I think I can motion that we have them come back with a public hearing on this, with everything. See,
Okay, a motion by Richard to have them come back for a public hearing for the changes to this plan. Is there a second? And if there's no second, actually, I'm going to second the motion. So there is a second. So we have the motion and a second, and all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Yep.
You, me, and who else? Jane? Are you an aye or no? Is that, okay, aye. And all those opposed?
No,
2 noes. So the motion carries. 3-2. Okay, motion carries. So what we're going to be looking for are the revised drawings. We'll try and expedite as much as possible for you. And would it be able to be at our next meeting? Or is that too soon for the notifications?
It'll be the 28th.
The 25th, I believe that would be too soon. Would you even be able to get it together? Yeah. Okay. We'll worry about
Okay. All right.
Do you have a date? I'm sorry.
We don't have a date.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
When would your next meeting be after the 25th? That's not-
Get you that in a moment. It's the second and fourth Thursdays.
15th of September.
It'll actually be the 8th
8th of October,
of
September.
September. Okay,
Can you make that?
yeah, I think we can try to make that. Well, we'll shoot for that one.
Okay, yeah, we won't notice, I mean, it's not a notice right now that we're gonna have that public hearing, but yeah, when you get your stuff together.
Thank
It'll
you
be-
very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Let's see. Next up, we have a compliance hearing, Store It in Swansea. And they had several items, I guess, to be added to their plat, I think.
Would you like me to bring the plan over here for you guys to pass around? Or would you like to look at it on the table where?
We'll
it
just go
is?
on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll just go over the list as to what they're supposed to have on it.
since you were here.
I wasn't here for that.
So they needed to provide food allergens, 12 catch basins. So here's the drawing of the detail of the food allergens. They needed to indicate the height and material of all fencing, which they have now. Indicate the location of power supply. Here. The height of all of the. Yeah. Yeah. Addition of solid fencing to the north side of the development for screening, which they have indicated privacy slides.
So they did add them all.
They did add them all.
Okay. Okay, so for the compliance hearing for Store It in Swansea, we need a motion to, for a final approval, actually, is what that would be, final
I'll make a
approval.
motion for final approval,
I'm sorry,
Motion
would you please say the motion again, Mike?
for final approval on the compliance.
for the chairman to sign
Right.
the plat.
Oh, so-
Okay, let's see, who beat who out there? Okay, Jane got that one. Yep. Okay, we have a motion by Michael York to, for the compliance hearing for Store It in Swansea to allow the chairman to sign it, actually, is what it amounts to. Second by Jane. Is there any further discussion? And all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so they're good. Next is a compliance hearing for the West Swansea Road Solar Garden. And again, the drawing is back there. And we looked at it before. Has anybody seen it? You've seen it?
Here for the road, comes in here. Bring it all the way down.
Okay, so a motion for final approval on the compliance hearing on West Swansea Road Solar Garden would be in order.
I will move that we're ready for final.
Motion by Jane for final approval of the solar garden. Is there a second? Second by Richard Lane. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor by saying, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that one's good. Okay. And that's the end of the discussions there. We have site plan review regulations, but before we get into that one there, on our, as near as I can tell, on our compliance hearings, we're supposed to notice them just like we notice all the other. We have to notice the abutters, the whole list, the whole shoot match as far as that goes. We hadn't done that in the past. We haven't been doing it. We didn't do it this time. And again, unless someone has a real issue with it or complains about it, it's not really that big of a deal. But I'm thinking that in further, we ought to, in our rules of procedure or site plan reg, probably rules of procedure, we could approve the plat at the meeting, keep the public hearing open, have discussion, approve the plat. And if there are going to be conditions, then we leave the public hearing open until our next meeting. So we just notice it. We don't have to notice all the abutters. We announce it to the meeting that they're going to be in the next meeting for the compliance hearing. Then we have that, then we close the hearing and it's a final approval. I think we can do that. I don't see anywhere in the regulations that we can't do that. But I do see in the regulations that we are supposed to notice it like we do everything else. And that's the whole pain in the neck. Sarah's got to send all the registered letters out and all that type of stuff. So I think maybe we ought to do that. I don't know. Anybody think so? All
Yeah,
right.
that sounds good.
Now we just have to remember next time we get one of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, okay. All right, and the, see ya. And the site plan review regulations, that was, and I've got a copy of it here. That was just that memo that's sent around to add into our site plan regs at some point when we get to redoing them over. Again, that just deals with the,
All the memo from last meeting.
yeah, and I have a copy of it someplace here. It's right here. I'll read it. I don't know if anybody has it. I have it right here. So we're proposing in, and it'll be in section 8I, I guess that's L probably is what it is. So what we'll say on that provision will be if after review by the Conservation Commission has been determined that potential damage to an underlying aquifer or wellhead protection area would result from the proposed use, then the following additional items may be required by the planning board. Because that's under the part of our regulations that says we're going to require this, and this from the applicants.
Richard, could I have a copy of that? So I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in here.
It's not
I
on
don't-
tonight.
It's not in tonight. I'll give you a copy of this one.
I think I have that. That's the original one.
Yeah.
That's the one we got, yeah, a couple weeks ago, the
Oh,
one that I
okay.
sent out.
Okay, I think I
You
do
have it?
that. I
Okay,
think I do, but
All
I
right.
would appreciate it.
I'll just slide this one over to you anyway,
Right, super, thank you.
but I'll just read it.
Yep.
We can comment on it here. So yeah, if after review by the Conservation Commission has been determined that potential damage to an underlying aquifer or wellhead protection area would result from the proposed use, then the following additional items may be required by the planning board. Again, it's to let the applicant know, or notice that we may be requiring and can require the stuff if we want to. And we'd be looking maybe for data reports prepared by a professional engineer or a qualified groundwater consultant to assess any potential damage to the underlying aquifers or wellhead protection areas from the proposed use. So in other words, yeah, we would have a professional in there to say whether or not it potentially could be damaged or not if a spill or whatever occurred. Which I think is a better way of handling it rather than just saying no this, no that, no use at all, and not letting an applicant come in and address it.
Because it would just still be up to us to take the professional's opinion on whether it's gonna potentially to contaminate whatever the heck
That's
the
right.
question is, right? It'd
Yeah.
just be up to us to,
We wouldn't take the applicant's word for it, right? We could if we wanted to hire a professional and they would pay for it, we would hire a professional to look at the whole thing over to see if there was potential damage, to see what was actually under the piece of land that they had, you know, as far as aquifers go and those things. And also they would, let's see. Yeah, and the board couldn't engage any professional assistance because we might not know what the heck they're talking about in those reports. We've seen some of those traffic reports and stuff in here and the lighting reports and the drainage and things like that, where it's like 50 pages long. So we could reserve the right to hire a professional to take a look at that stuff if we didn't quite get it, and they would pay for it as well. So that's what that first paragraph is saying right there, that we can do that. And then, let's see. And then under storm, we may require a stormwater management and pollution prevention plan. And those plans, if we required them, they would include, at least anyways, a minimum stormwater discharge setbacks between well supply, water supply wells, wellhead protection areas, and any contaminated soils, which were deemed contaminated, or something on there, just distance, showing distances. Then a source control plan that would minimize the release of pollutants and would identify pollution prevention measures. You know, what they're doing to prevent the contamination of soil if it were to occur. You know, the measures that they're going to take in part of the stormwater management and pollution plan. Say, for instance, they got a big stockpile of snow with the salt and stuff in it, and Barbara's been here a number of times about the salt and stuff there. They would have to have a plan, or should have a plan, to show if that's going to be diverted away from where an aquifer might be, or reasons why it may not affect it. Let's see here. And did I just read that? Source control, yeah, I did that. Plans to maintain vertical separation between the bottom of the stormwater infiltration area and the average seasonal high water table is determined by a licensed hydrologist, soil scientist, engineer, or other qualified professional as determined by the planning board. So, you know, you've seen, like in that plant we just saw right there, they had these detention areas. They're deep, you know, dugout areas like a pool or something where they have, and we don't really know that, you know, what's going in there is going into the ground there. And we need to know what the distance from the groundwater seasonal high level is to the bottom of that ditch to see if it's going to be impervious or whatever, what's going to be soaking into that that groundwater. And again, it's because of the aquifers, not necessarily the whole groundwater. We do it all the time. You know, the groundwater, if it's clean and stuff, it's fine to soak down into the ground, and that's where it's supposed to go.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yep.
So most fire ponds have kind of a clay base
Yeah.
underneath the water, and which does not allow the water to seep through unless you have drought conditions and it begins to crack and open up seams.
Mhm.
But if it's kept wet, if that clay should seal the bottom so you don't have loss of water through. Is that part of the engineering for these drainage, you know, the retention ponds? Do they ever talk about that?
It probably wouldn't be, because they're for two separate items. Those detention ponds actually are for the water to permeate into the soil. But the fire ponds, of course, are just
Well, you have to hold.
maintain the water the whole
Right,
time.
but what I'm saying is if the water table is high enough, you might want to request that it be lined in clay so you don't have it seeping into that aquifer.
For these detection ponds we're talking about, or
Right.
not for the fire ponds, but
No.
for these detection ones,
And-
yeah.
and Where
Yeah.
the water table is high, and you may not want it.
Well, what would probably happen would be if they had a detention pond there sitting close to the high water table, whatever, 3 feet or whatever might be the minimum. But they might not be able to put it there if there was a potential of whatever their operation was, if the tank burst or whatever and filled this pond up with their chemicals or whatever, that it would go into
Right.
into the system. They might have to move the pond over there.
someplace else.
Yeah, but just so that we know, if it was like 50 feet between the high water level and the bottom of that pond, it probably wouldn't matter. But if it was like 3 feet. it
Right.
might. So again, we need to know that from a geologist as to what the heck is going on there. Let's see what else we got in there. Proposed storage areas, again, this is in the stormwater management plan. Proposed storage areas for animal manures, fertilizers, and compost, which they get away with it right down here, but if it were run as a business, they might not. But, you know, the farmers can spread the compost and manure right up to the river and right on that big aquifer right down in the field down there, not a problem. But if it were a business operation or something like that, where they had it stockpiled, then
Yeah, the business operation is gonna have, the farmers and stuff are just gonna have natural waste when they
yeah,
start.
they're a business in
It's
a
not
sense.
chemicals in it.
But if we say we had a processing area, where
Correct.
somebody was using a bunch of manure trucked in from all over the place processing. or something
You don't
like
know
that.
what chemicals could be in with that manure. That's
Don't
the
really.
issue.
But anyways, that would be part of their plan as to, again, it's a stormwater plan, so that runoff would not go into the aquifer is what we're talking about. Let's see, proposed storage areas, we do this anyway, but proposed storage areas for hazardous substances to include a proposed impervious surface designed and maintained to prevent flow to exposed soils, floor drains, and stormwater drains. And we usually have that anyways in our site plan review, but definitely we would have it in something like this if the potential for the aquifer or disturbing aquifer is there. Also, locations of outdoor storage areas of hazardous substances and associated material and or waste, including plans to prevent exposure to precipitation and showing a minimum of 50 feet from surface water and storm drains, a minimum of 75 feet from private wells, and showing the distance from any wellhead protection area. It's pretty self-explanatory there. And a plan showing secondary containment for outdoor storage of hazardous substances, which again is standard practice. And if it's a hazardous substance, they'd have to do that anyway, but just the secondary, like gas stations have, you know, they've got that little, that cement pad and they've got that little set of grooves all the way around.
Yeah.
That's a secondary containment area there. And the tanks they have in the ground, they have 2 tanks there. They got a wall in between. That's a secondary containment area right there. Those are the monitored, those inline empty walls are things that are monitored. So they can check for waste and stuff or leaks and stuff. But that's all I had on there, but we can add to that and do whatever we want, but to start anyways, to put into our regs to cover that, because we don't have anything in there to do it. And that's where, I think that's where it should be. It's a good place in our site plan review regulations for that,
Yeah,
rather than an ordinance. Ordinance, yeah, they work some purposes, sometimes they don't. But anyways, pass that down to Beverly. So she knows what we're talking about.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so, yeah, that was it. I think we had other business. I think we discussed in the beginning about maybe putting a table right in here and having all our drawings for site plans and stuff right on there, so we can all look at the big drawings while they're having their presentation up there. Utilize that space right there. And maybe, you know, when we go over and we can have a workshop on reading drawings too, because they're hard to read sometimes, the drawings, you know, especially this guy that was up here, he puts a lot on one sheet, that guy. Some of them
Yeah,
have
every-
numerous sheets, but this guy puts a lot on them, and I don't, it's probably just the way he is an engineer, but I don't know, I can't help but think some of them do that too. So people,
Try to
you know,
try to confuse
get
us.
overwhelmed a little bit.
yeah,
But if we did our, you know, when we have the application in here and the applicant does his presentation, goes over what's on the site plan, we make them go through the list. Do you have this? Do you have that? And shows us all out that stuff. And then if the planning board, as we have our drawings here, we can go over it while we're looking at him and this and see what's there. And then just look at the drawings for a little while. Let them sit down there, you know, the planning board, look at the drawings for a little while and just decipher what they just said. Because we all see them on the computers, but it's not the same thing as seeing them on that drawing back there.
Right.
It's just not the same thing. So, you know, if we took, you know, 10 minutes or whatever, just discuss it among ourselves. We can't do it before the meeting. We could do it, you know, but we'd be violating the state law. But if we discuss it among ourselves, hey, what's this over here? Or do you see this or that all along here? And then we can ask questions and stuff. And then when we're all familiar with it, then we can vote whether it's complete or not, and then have a public hearing. And we all have all this stuff here. I'm thinking maybe we could do something like that for the larger thing, not for every little thing, but for the larger things. They supply us with 4 drawings. Usually a full set, four drawings, right? So that'd be plenty to go around.
Have you ever thought about the possibility of putting, prior to the meeting starting, I know this is probably poor Sarah would have to do it, but putting the drawings with some kind of sticky thing on the walls so that you can all look at them prior to actually sitting down in a meeting?
For, you mean for the
For anybody.
people, for anybody coming in
Yeah,
here?
You've got plenty of wall space that you could actually put them
We
on, just
do.
need that sticky.
But I don't know, I think we ought to have them on the table. I don't know, sticking stuff on the walls,
They won't
if
run.
they'd appreciate that too much.
No, there's art tape that, I mean. not
There
tape,
is,
it's
yeah.
tape That won't, that shouldn't leave anything on the walls. But
But we'll,
anyway, it's just a thought, if you
Yeah.
have them on the walls, people can walk up to them and look at it.
yeah, you know, if we have a big crowd or something in here, that might be a way to do it, because they can't see what the
They
heck's
can't,
going on.
yeah.
You know, the easel is turned our way and they're like listening and whatever. So yeah, we could do that sometimes, or even just extra stands like that, have some of the drawings on. Not too many people usually look at them. in my experience anyways, but sometimes some people want to see them, and we've had them up at the table, say, well, take a look, let's see. But yeah, on the walls, they're easy to read.
I'm
that
sure
way.
your local residents will want to see the drawings for Lane Fields.
There'll be a couple people that watch. it,
Yeah.
you're
There are
right.
gonna be a number of people wanting to see
Yeah.
those.
Okay, yeah, hopefully they give us more than one drawing, give us only that one drawing. But if not, we can share that one, obviously. but-
Just
could
to
project
see how they're gonna line your
on the
fields.
wall, but
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get away with sticking anything on the wall here.
Yeah, they might not like that.
Mikey Gabal's gonna come out and beat on you if you do that.
I think there would be something said.
Well, we can, at least we can utilize an extra table space in there just to push the drawings out
Yeah.
and do that type of thing. Let's see, anything else?
I would like to bring up do you mind if I bring up the webinar?
Go for it.
So go.
So several of us, including Mike and Sarah and I, attended a webinar on the new land use.
Oh, I saw that one's
Laws.
coming up, yeah.
And it does affect the planning board. So the first is that if you do a denial, you don't do very many denials, but if you do a denial, you really need to have very detailed reasons for why you're denying it. And I actually asked the question, are the minutes sufficient? And the response was, well, they are if they are extremely detailed, but you may have to actually write up another document with an attorney to make sure that is very, very clear why this board denied, that applicant.
But again, the minutes just reflect what the board said. If the board doesn't make it clear, then your minutes shouldn't make it clear. I mean, your minutes
Should.
should only reflect what the board says, so the board are the ones that have to make it
Well,
absolutely
this
clear.
additional thing about the planning board consulting with an attorney and writing up that consultation
Yeah,
was something that I hadn't heard before. Had you ever heard that before?
I haven't either, no.
I really haven't, but the Lands Appeal Board that they started a couple years had hinted that if you went to one of their webinars. They had hinted at that they could overturn it if you weren't clear on your zoning and why you turned somebody down.
Right.
Well, let's hope it doesn't work up to something like they have in the zoning board where we have to check off if we met these 5 standards or something.
So,
Well, they're more subjective than we are.
so anyway, I mean,
I still
Yeah.
think that's
detailed minutes are really
Detailed.
critical for a denial.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other issue they raised has to do with religious purposes. So the state is now exempting applicants who are wanting to build a religious structure. It doesn't really define this at all from all zoning and site board regulations. Except for federal and state laws. Height, I think I have them all in my head, height, setbacks, open space. There's a fourth. Setbacks, height, open space.
What's parking in it?
Was it?
What's parking in it?
That's it. But it says nothing, only those items. It says nothing about landscaping, nothing about lighting, nothing about parking, which means that an applicant who decides that they're going to apply for some sort of religious purpose does not have to meet any of those requirements.
Did they still come in? Did they say they still submit a site plan, but they don't have to go through those requirements at all, and they don't have to prove that they're a religious entity?
Well, they don't have a definition. The problem is the law has no definition
Yeah.
of what they're,
But a religion has.
So we take their word for it, really, I mean, we're in a position where we just take their word for it.
They have to do an affidavit.
they have to do an application.
Oh, okay,
And actually, probably the select board will have the final say if it's.
But-
religious or not.
The items that I
No, I don't think
mentioned, the setbacks and so forth, only when they are not burdensome. Remember that last phrase? As long as they are not burdensome to the practice of the religion, which means, I think could be interpreted that even the setbacks and the heights and so forth could be eliminated if they claimed it was burdensome to them to comply.
yeah, and had a judge agree, They-
So I'm just telling you that there were a lot of questions about that one.
yeah, that's interesting. We'll see Yeah.
The
So
webinar
would
will
that
be-
really
the
pertain
webinar
to
will
like
be
them building a
available
church
after hours.
though?
Well, I
Because,
think,
like,
I think it's intended for a church, but what,
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like, what if this person says that they're claiming to build this strip club right here, and they're claiming to be religious and, you know what I mean?
well, I mean, certainly you can claim it's religious. I think you need to be more than, I mean, you have to explain why a strip club is something you're worshiping or, you know, why it's a religion to you, right, in the application. But I'm thinking of, there are all sorts of other religions that are really not, often not compatible with a small New England town.
Right, and
Yeah.
you
Right.
cannot limit their religious building or whatever they built it to a certain place in town.
You build it
They
anywhere.
can build it
Any place.
anywhere.
Oh, really? Yeah, so they don't have to abide by those regulations.
And they don't have, and it doesn't say anything about a minimum
Oh, I
amount
know.
of land.
I know what the other was, Mike. It was area and building coverage. Those are the other two that are mentioned in that. They have to comply as long as it's not burdensome to the religious practice.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's that big loophole,
Yeah,
which would allow applicant to say, well, if you, restrict us in this way, it's gonna be burdensome to us.
So we've got Mike Jasmine on the Zoom, and he's reminding us that the feds have a list of what can be considered a religion. However, the statute has no definitions yet, so that list does not apply.
There
Yes.
is a religious definition in another statute regarding taxation.
Yes.
Elimination of taxation for religious purposes, but that is not in this particular statute. So it's an open book right now.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna have a real problem with it.
If, somebody
It's too
wants to come
broad.
to town.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the Free Staters tried to do that over on Vine Street. Like Iron Freeman's home, they tried to go to City King.
Yeah.
That's our house of religion. So they didn't have to pay property tax.
Yeah.
They got shot.
they
down.
lost that one.
But
They
under the
might
new
have-
law, would they get it?
They might be able to do it.
Maybe they'll give it another
Said
try.
on Sunday or something, we're gonna do prayer meetings.
Mhm.
Anyway, just thought you guys might
Yep, interesting.
be aware of those changes.
Be aware. Always something changing.
Those webinars are really informative for me.
Lots of that stuff is informative.
To a week.
You do, or you would?
I do.
You do, really?
Yeah,
Becoming quite the expert then.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, I don't
I
know.
would say that.
Well, Beverly is our expert, but you're probably creeping up on her.
I just want to know when I make a ruling on the board if I'm correct. or not.
All right, anything else for discussion? Anybody want to discuss anything? Site plan regs or any of that type of stuff?
I mentioned, so I'm not going to be here at the next meeting, but is SMC going to be on the agenda next time? Okay. Looking at their revised plan, on the southeast corner of their plan, they have this place for snow removal. I mean, that's where they're going to stack it.
SMC is which?
Route
Asher,
12.
Route 12.
Okay, on Route 12, okay.
And my concern is, where is that going to run to? Considering the slope that's there now, and I didn't see where there's any sort of drainage tie-in to where they're going to be pushing that snow. So that would be something that I'd like to have, and get an answer. if possible.
So had it shown that on their original site plan there? Is that what you're talking about? This is one of their revisions?
This is the revision that
Okay.
they put to us last
All
time.
right, so it's, yep. Open game. Oh, one other, actually, before I forget, I interrupt you. Lily is resigning from her position as an alternate to our board. She doesn't have time, she has little kids and just can't put the time in that she needs to, and she was good enough to let us know. So we need another alternate if anyone knows of anyone. Here's of anyone or anything like that.
Yeah, because we got Steve and his health is not the greatest. Sometimes he can't make it.
So unless there's,
Can we post that again? Like at the post office or wherever we normally post things?
I can put it on the website, you
It's
know,
always on the
we're
website.
looking for alternate.
It's on the town.
It's already on there? It is, it's probably a standing head. We always need them, so it's probably.
Yeah, it's always.
Okay,
Maybe we can make it a little bit more obvious for a little while.
maybe
put it
so.
on.
Yeah. Great pay and great benefits.
Yeah, great benefits,
Yeah.
travel pay, everything.
That's right. Yep. Just try and collect them. Okay, if there's nothing else that anyone wants to discuss, then a motion for adjournment would be in order. You weren't even paying attention and you made the motion.
I always leave that one for you, too.
Okay. Motion by Jane to adjourn the meeting, and who seconded that? Second by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and we're officially adjourned. I guess you do.
Adjourned.